everybody. We're glad you are listening to our new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. We're glad to be here. This is Steven.
This is Dakota, and we're coming at you live from our fortress in this winter wasteland.
Well, we're live now. You're not going to listen to this live. Yes, our winter fortress. It is a little snowy today. Big flakes.
Yeah.
Big flakes. And a couple big flakes are sitting here going to talk to you about movies today. So
yeah, just when you think the winter's done, bam. Rears its ugly head
This is
once
what
again.
always happens. I had to tell everybody. Everybody's like, it's spring. It's like, no, it's February. This happens every February. We get the warm spell, and then winter comes back.
February, usually the coldest month of winter.
Yes. But, yeah, today we're a little late, but Dakota and I we have lives. Unfortunately, this isn't our full-time job, even though both of us desperately wish our full-time job could just be figuring out movie stuff and talking about them.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
I think it's maybe not everybody's dream, but, a lot of people wish their full-time job could be talking about whatever they love. So, but we're not in that boat yet, and so we're coming a little late, but it's still fresh on everybody's minds, I think. The Lego Batman movie is what we want to talk about today. Dakota, let's start with you. Now, obviously the reason this even came to be was because of the Lego movie, which, if I remember correctly, you are a big fan of?
I am, yes.
Now, what did you like about the Lego movie? The Lego movie.
Honestly, it was just really kind of fun, and it kind of had that self-aware sense of humor about it, and the movie didn't take itself seriously, which I suppose all these things are the reason why the Lego video games kind of became as big as they did. I've only played the one.
I am an avid fan of the Lego video games, and I like it even better now that they allow voices. Because when they first came out, it was like, it was like all grunting, and it was kind of got annoying after a while. Once they changed to having audio in them, I thought they got a lot better, but I've always loved them. I've liked how it's kind of puzzles you have to figure out, and how it's just like, there'll just be random jokes thrown into the mix of it, where you'll be playing a game based off of maybe a movie that wasn't a comedy, but they'll throw in like the pants falling down or the villain like tripping over something, or just something kind of silly, just to kind of remind you like, yeah, this is still just Lego fun.
Yeah.
And that, you're right, that is kind of what they brought to those movies, was kind of like that that sort of feel where it's like, yeah, we're gonna tell a story, but it's still going to be just goofy Lego-y fun,
Yeah, then, I also love the references. I mean, what movie can claim that they had Dumbledore, Han Solo,
and Gandalf? Dumbledore and Gandalf standing next to each other, and them ripping on, you don't know which one's which. I thought that was pretty great. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
And along with one of the Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's like,
yeah, and have Michelangelo next to Shaq.
Yeah.
I mean, this just doesn't happen.
The whole thing was just great.
And Abraham Lincoln in a rocket chair.
Yeah. And, I love the voices. Just Morgan Freeman kind of doing a little bit more comedic side. Will Ferrell kind of attempting to do a really, overly serious side.
Yeah, he kind of took his Megamind character, but made him more sinister. Because it was almost, he kind of did that Megamind thing, and why I say that is because if you remember Megamind at all, he played that character where Megamind pronounced everything wrong,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Lord Business did a little bit, like not to the extent of Megamind, but they'd have him say things kind of in a goofy way or whatever. I think that's just kind of what Will Ferrell likes to do, and it makes it funny, and it was funny. But we all know who the real standout character of the Lego movie was, besides, certain moments with Emmett and Vitruvius. It was Lego Batman. It was Batman. Batman stole the movie, and it was because Will Arnett found this level of being broody, but in a very comedic light, where it's like, how can I harness a little bit of that over-the-top Christian Bale, but also just say, you know what, this is just fun. And everybody acknowledged he did it. He pulled it off. And then he had that song to boot, that Darkness, No Parents, ridiculous song where they had him just love making his own rap songs and stuff. I mean, all of that just combined into this, like, over-the-top, beautiful character where you just loved him. You just loved him. And so the minute they said, yeah, we realized he's great, we're making him into his own movie, I was like, this is genius.
Yeah, oddly...
And then at the same time, I was like, but sometimes these spin-off movies where they take a side character and give him the lead is a bad idea. But I was like, it's Batman. If they remembered that it's Batman, this could work. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
They remembered, it's Batman. Let's just let him be. Let's bring in all the Batman things that we love and things that we know is silly and just mash it all together is really what happened. And I think for the most part, they succeeded in the Lego Batman movie. I don't know, where are you at with the Lego Batman movie?
I actually thought it was pretty good. Just from the get-go when he starts narrating.
Okay.
He does start narrating right as the movie starts.
It's still a black screen. And then one of my favorite moments happens in the first 30 seconds when the DC logo comes up and he goes, DC, the house that Batman built. And then he tells Batman basically to, like, eat it. Or he tells Superman to eat it after he says it's the house that Batman built. I almost fell to the floor. I was laughing so hard. And then I had to remind myself, the movie hasn't even started yet, and it's already completely self-aware humor that you want.
I felt a little ashamed because I laughed pretty hard. Really hard.
All right. I don't know about Dakota.
Busted.
I was there with my two sons that are 7 and 5, and almost everyone else in the theater was children that just wanted to go to the bathroom and where was their sugar and things like this. And I was probably laughing awkwardly loud comparatively.
Yeah. The moment that made it for me, this is also in the beginning, he takes a quote from Michael Jackson and then attributes it to himself. Not even Michael Scott.
Yeah.
The guy from The Office, the horrible, self-centered boss, had the cojones to do that.
Michael Scott only steals a quote from Wayne Gretzky, but not Michael Jackson.
And he's like, no, I said that. And it's just like, of course you did. Yes. Oh, man. The beginning of this movie, so great.
Yes. So that's... Okay, so they tapped the humor. As like, you had a pretty good sense that they tapped the humor. And so the next thing you're wondering is, what are they going to do with Batman in this movie? We know they have the humor, but what is his arc going to be? And I loved it. I loved the arc they did with Batman, where they just had him, in a sense, be that the classic character arc, but it worked because of how they did it in this movie, where he was the guy who's like, I don't need anyone else. I'm Batman. But then they start to flesh out why he doesn't want anyone else in his life. And I thought that brought in, like, there was even like this emotional level, even though they used it for silliness a lot, there was an emotional level to why he didn't want anyone else near him. And so I thought even they did a good job at bringing a character story to this movie, which was really refreshing for a movie that's, is kind of really banking on silliness.
Yeah. Obviously this movie was going to attract a lot of kids. Yep. And it was going to make a lot of money no matter how...
You pretty much assumed it was probably going to be a moneymaker.
Yeah,
yep.
No matter how it was done. But they really poured a lot of heart into this movie. And one thing that kind of blew me away was the little things that they did. Like, they kind of explored the relationship that Joker and Batman have.
Yeah, that's almost your love story of this movie, except it's the opposite. It's a love story wrapped in a hate story. Because he makes Joker feel bad that Batman won't say, you're the one I hate the most.
Yeah.
And Joker wants Batman to hate him more than anyone else. And Joker's sad that Batman doesn't feel that way. Like, this is another funny moment. I think it's in a trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, but where Batman won't say that Joker's his number one villain. And then Batman goes, I like to fight around. Oh, that was so ridiculously funny.
And for me, the crazy thing is there's a ton of comics that kind of address that, the relationship the two have.
Yeah.
But
in good way, there's good comics, and then there's some bad ones, the ones that don't work as well. But yeah, you're right. It does get addressed a lot.
Yeah, but I don't think we ever saw a movie. The only thing that came close was, of course, The Dark Knight, where they kind of shared this odd relationship where one of them would essentially be lost without the other one.
Yeah, there's even a moment where the Joker in The Dark Knight goes, "You complete me."
Yeah.
You know, like he's kind of acknowledging that we need each other to bring symmetry or or like a balance or something. And so yeah, they do kind of explore that a little bit in this movie in a different light, obviously not as dark as The Dark Knight. And so yeah, it was just like you're realizing, and I thought the whole movie was good, but I thought the first half was perfect. Like, the first half of this movie was perfect. And then there were, like, I loved the whole movie. There were a few things that got a little, like, as it went on. But I realized, like, the first half of this movie, it was hard for me to find anything wrong with it. But that's just kind of how I felt. I don't know, was there a point when you're, like, you kind of started, like, you weren't sure, but then you kind of came back into it?
Not really. One thing that I kind of loved is this movie. It did kind of have that serious story involving Batman, why he works alone. But then the movie threw all like the craziness of Batman. Yeah. You see all these horrible villains from the comics.
Like ones that actually exist in comics.
Yes, Condiment Man. Condiment Man was a thing. And then you see all the campy, just over-the-top villains from the old Batman TV show with Adam West, and I was just loving it. Like, that's one thing that's unfortunate about children who probably saw this movie. Some of the jokes were lost on them.
Yeah, there were a lot of jokes that were not adult in the sense of risque or something, but like adult in the sense that like it was just over kids' heads.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, those kind of made the movie a little better for me. It was like acknowledging the previous history. Batman obviously has been around forever. He's had a ton of incarnations.
I look really good for my age. Like he says something like that because they do acknowledge that he's been around since, 1940 or 39 or something. So, but yeah, I mean, so that was just refreshing to see in what is essentially a spin-off movie, is that it didn't feel like they went lazy. A good example of a spin-off movie that was just a really bad idea would be Minions in more recent memory, where it just went south real quick because they're not meant to be a lead. There's nothing really interesting about them. They're really one-dimensional. Like, they just want to work for somebody bad and say banana, and things like that, where it made a lot of money because kids are like, Minions! But it didn't work in reality.
Yeah, that's very true.
But this was, they were careful in realizing, like, we have a good character. How do we tastefully and creatively, bring fun into that, and so that's what they did. I mean, you got when you're talking about they have King Tut and Egghead show up from the 1966 TV show at one point. Just all this. But then they introduce the original Robin is who kind of becomes his kind of adoptive son like he does in the comics in this. And I would say that Robin is kind of our entry point into the heart in this movie, I guess you could say, like of bringing that a more emotional character arc of Batman / Bruce Wayne into this movie. And I guess, okay, so we have Will Arnett coming back as Batman, Michael Cera as Dick Grayson / Robin, Rosario Dawson as Barbara Gordon, and then it kind of goes on and on with just like a lot of known names people have heard of, just kind of filling in a lot of the other names up. Zach Galifianakis as Joker, Ray Fiennes as Alfred, which Voldemort. He's who played Voldemort, for those of you who aren't familiar with that name so much. But then even all the other characters, like I said, they just kind of filled in, like that one girl who's kind of getting to be a bigger comedian actress now was Harley Quinn, Jenny Slate, or however you say her name.
Yeah.
And so all these, how did you feel about the voice casting overall in this movie, Dakota?
I thought it was pretty good. One thing I kind of admired, they addressed once again Batman's history. You kind of had Bane talking in that really weird voice.
Yeah, they had him look like the luchador Bane mostly, but talking in a mocking Tom Hardy voice.
Yeah, and then for me, I honestly about lost my mind when Two-Face spoke, and it was Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, and then
voice speaking.
I just ran across somebody had interviewed Billy D. Williams about this, and how he said, "Yeah, I was excited to finally get to be Two-Face because I never got to be Two-Face in the Tim Burton films. Because he was only Harvey Dent in the 1989."
He actually specifically signed up for that movie just so he could play a villain.
Yeah, he was excited of the prospect of being Two-Face, and then eventually when they got to Two-Face, it was a new director, new Batman. Tommy Lee Jones was brought in as Two-Face, as we all know, or most of us probably at least have some recollection of. It's okay if you haven't seen it.
You're better off not seeing it, honestly.
Probably better off. But yeah, and so I thought the voice casting was pretty good. I really enjoyed kind of who they picked. One that really, there was two that really stood out to me. I really liked Michael Cera doing Robin, which surprised me because I'm not a real big Michael Cera person. And I really liked Rosario Dawson doing Barbara Gordon Batgirl.
Yeah.
I thought, she was just really good, and she kind of brought her voice just worked well for what they did with that character. Let's put it that way. And then as far as look at this movie, it was pretty similar to the Lego Movie. They kind of had that same kind of brick world that they had in Lego Movie.
Yeah. Honestly, it was almost like they took that concept and just multiplied it by 100, because Gotham City in this movie just looks like a ginormous mess, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, if you attempted to build this thing with actual Legos, honestly, you would need a few people and a lot of free time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, and kind of the colors they used in this movie. It wasn't quite as bright as Lego Movie, because it was still, a little bit of a Batman movie, but I really liked the way they did the coloring in this movie. There's like a lot of oranges, and I think because, it was always like sunset type lighting and things like that. And so I really enjoyed kind of that whole look of it. But, when I try to think of what I really didn't like about this movie, it's hard for me to really find anything I really didn't like. And of course it wasn't like I was excited for this movie, but it wasn't like I was desperate for this movie to be the greatest thing I've ever seen. I just hoped it was going to be good. And so I really don't feel like I'm too glossy-eyed on this. But it's just really hard for me to think of something like that I really didn't like about, other than I thought there was a slight time somewhere in midpoint where maybe they just kind of had to find their footing again with moving the movie along. But at the same time, I don't really feel like that's stuck because the movie was always entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, the movie was always still had that entertaining movement going on. It's just as far as like progression of the story, maybe it kind of stalled there for a little bit. But I am interested with how good this movie was and the success of it, of what this means for the Lego movies. You know, I mean, there was a preview for a Ninjago or Ninjago, or how do you say that?
Oh my gosh, I think it's Ninjago.
There's the Lego Ninja series of
Ninjago? Is that really how it's pronounced?
It's like Ninjago or something, that they had a preview for that coming out later this year. Actually, it comes out already, so there'll be 2 Lego World movies, and that one looks interesting too.
Yeah, unfortunately, we won't be getting the ones we really want to see, like a Lego Lord of the Rings movie or a Lego Star Wars movie. Of right now,
I was gonna say, Lego. I feel like, well, maybe if Disney didn't own Star Wars, I feel like a Lego Star Wars movie could happen. I feel like it's probably maybe a little more of a long shot now.
Yeah, Disney would demand like half the movie.
Well, I just don't think Disney would work with Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
to make that happen.
Disney kind of has their own toys that they like to play with, and
at the same time, they made a deal with Sony for Spider-Man, so maybe nothing's out of the question.
I think that was kind of a one-sided situation.
That's true.
Where Disney was holding all the cards.
I think that's true. Disney had a lot to their advantage, especially after the Sony hack.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's true.
Especially after that last Spider-Man movie. To be fair.
Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was pretty atrocious. So, yep. But we're not talking about Spider-Man too much. We did. But as far as Lego Batman goes, like, wow, I would say it's just a fun movie. I think even if your only reference points for Batman are pop culture things around you and just bits and pieces, that you would still find this movie really enjoyable. But obviously, if you have even more knowledge of Batman type things and things like that, you're going to find this movie incredibly enjoyable. But that's what I thought was cool about this movie, is that it could stand on its own. Even if you're only like mildly familiar with Batman, I think this movie does still stand up. Because there's another thing I started thinking of afterwards, is like rein myself in here, and was this movie still good, even if I weren't a big Batman fan? Because I read the comics, and I've liked Batman things over the years. But I think even when you look at it from a standpoint of just being like knowing certain pop culture things about Batman, this movie'd still be fun. You'd still find this movie fun and enjoyable time, and it still does have a cool story of a man, in there too, and him kind of battling himself and things like that. So it's still fun on that level too. And so I don't know, if I were using a grading scale, I guess I would give this movie an A.
I would probably have to go A-.
Okay.
Just because the beginning and the end of this film were just great, honestly.
Yep.
That's all I could say about it. But that middle did kind of drag.
Yeah, there was just this point in the middle, and I think why I still feel safe getting it an A is I feel like it didn't last, and I feel like it didn't take away from the whole enough, at least in my eyes. So,
without spoiling anything, there comes a point in time where the Joker meets all these other villains, not necessarily comic book villains, and at that moment my mind was blown.
Yeah, they're just villains in general that don't have anything to do with Batman per se. And we'll just leave it at that because it's so great when it happens.
Yeah,
and who it is.
I was nerding out so hard. I really was, and it was shameful, but at the same time, I have no regrets.
It was pretty great. Which is where I think that was a level where that would be a point when just anybody could have fun with this movie. Where it wasn't like, not everything was like, you got to be in the know on Batman, but they just made it fun. They just made it a fun movie, and that's what it was. If you wanted to wrap this movie up in one word, I had that backwards.
Yeah.
I felt like Willy Wonka there. What? I felt like Willy Wonka where he's like, reverse that. Fun. That would be the one word to wrap this up in. So,
yeah.
Dakota, anything else on Lego Batman movie you wanted to bring up?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, good introduction for your kids into Batman because there's nothing too sinister in this, and but it gives you a lot about Batman.
Actually, I will add one more thing before we close this thing out.
Okay.
They captured the spirit of Robin in this thing so just perfectly. Yeah.
I mean, granted, the movie Robins have been pretty terrible. Well, there's really only been one.
Yeah.
One true movie Robin, and it was done poorly.
For those of you who aren't aware, Steven just rolled his eyes when he said that.
Yeah, it was poor. Yeah, this was... I've always felt, though, that the only way, for some reason, the only way Robin has ever worked is in animated form.
Well, I think part of it has to do with one thing that the movie addressed is you can't get a child and then put them in immediate danger, like taking on gangsters with guns.
And I think that's part of why it's hard for it to work, because picture a real movie where you have a 13-year-old beating up gangsters next to an adult muscular... I mean, it's just like...
Especially wearing
Tommy guns are going off at him, and he's punching... I mean, I think that's why it's hard for it to work in reality. I mean, even if you want to go as far as making Dick Grayson like a high schooler, it still is kind of like...
Yeah, the animated series at least made him a college student.
Yeah, in the animated series, and I think why they did why they did that in the animated series was then they could have him not be in some episodes.
Yeah,
like, oh, Robin's not here because he's at college,
and then his outfit, of course, does him no justice whatsoever.
Well, and that's the other thing is his outfit is a Target.
Yeah.
Here's Batman in all black, basically, unless you want to go back to the yellow oval days. But darkness, and then you have Robin who's fighting with the Dark Knight, wearing like bright red, yellow, and green. And so it's like, and barely covering his face.
Yeah,
from his identity, and so it is kind of silly. And even Batgirl wears purple. And so, yeah, it's and I think that's just part of what hurts him from working in a live action movie. But this was I didn't expect to like Robin as much as I did in this movie.
They did announce they're making a Nightwing movie just like a couple weeks ago, and I feel like this movie had a lot to do with that.
It does make you wonder.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder.
I think people sat around and they're like, why have we never seen a really good Robin in a movie?
Mm-hmm.
And then Warner Brothers like, man, we got to make this movie. We got to get it out the door before people lose interest and forget.
But if it's going to be live action, he's got to be Nightwing because he's got to be an adult.
Yeah.
Because if he's not an adult, it's awkward.
Yes, very awkward, especially if he's wearing the boy shorts. Yeah. Very, very awkward.
That was a great moment, too. So when he gets his suit and it's like this reggae suit. And he's like, it's pretty good, but these pants are too... And he goes, what does he go? Whip! And he rips them off. And yeah.
I can only look you in the eye right now.
I can only look you in the eyes right now. Yeah, or that moment where he's like, yeah, it's too bad you don't have your costume with you. And like Batman's like saying that sarcastically because he doesn't want Robin. And then Robin just goes, whip! And he's in his costume. Or rip, not whip.
Yeah.
That's because he goes rip. Oh, yeah, that's so great. But yeah, so definitely, if you haven't hopefully, I'm guessing you're getting the drift that we're saying, check this movie out.
If you don't like this movie, you're most likely Hitler, and you should commit suicide, like right now.
My disclaimer would be that it's Dakota's personal opinion, but yeah, it's true. If you hate this movie, you hate the world. No, I was kidding. But no, it's definitely fun. And so with that, we'll close this episode. remember to check us out on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube. We're in all those places. Subscribe to us if you haven't. Personally, I've just been really it's really meant a lot lately. We've been having some spikes in our viewings again, and we've had some more subscriptions happening in different places. That means a lot to us. We don't take that lightly that you guys are acknowledging that, yeah, we're here. And so that's cool for us to see. So yeah, we're glad you're doing that, and it just can help us gain some momentum, not just like in giving us a drive to keep doing this, but just help us gain momentum where we're like, hey, as people listening to the show, we want to do more with it. We would like to do more with it. And so thank you so much for that. And so, yeah, check us out in those places. Give us comments, feedback, suggestions, any and all. It's great to hear you. So we hope to be back soon with another new episode. But thanks for listening this time. This is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
We'll see you later.